All right, welcome back to another episode of Travel Ball Talk. I'm your host, Rich Prado, owner of Play in School. Today we're heading up to Illinois, Normal, Illinois, as well as the Chicagoland area to visit with Rhino Baseball and Greg Blaesing. Greg, how you doing, man?
I'm great, man. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. This is podcast number 2 for me today, so I'm powering through on a double header. I'm anxious to learn from you about Rhino. Rhino is one of those brands I've sort of known from like arm's length. I have to admit, I've been following you guys a while. I see you guys. There's not a lot of Rhino branding in the baseball space, right? So it's very unique. Not a lot of African safari animals used in travel baseball. So you stand out. I dig it. So let me kind of get out of the way. But before I get out of the way, I'm going to keep rambling. Go to rhinosportsacademy.com is the website, and on Twitter over at Rhino Baseball, at Rhino Baseball. And you can catch up with Greg there. But just give us the brief background on you personally, and then give us a little bit of an intro to where Rhino came from.
Gotcha. So originally from the Joliet area, went to Lockport Township High School. Played for the storied Jim Hall, who was there for a long, long time, and then played my collegiate baseball at Illinois State University for Jeff Stewart at first, and then Jim Brownlee the last couple of years there, and then had a very, very small cup of coffee playing independent ball. Turns out I really couldn't hit, so that ended things quickly. And then as soon as I got done with that, I kind of got back into private lessons and all that stuff, and then got into the travel ball world in 2000 and winter of 2008. Got a call from Nelson Gord, Illinois Indians, and he's like, "Hey, I heard about you from somebody. You want to coach a team for the Schaumburg Seminoles? They're needing a guy." And I said, "Yeah, sure." So I was really doing nothing with my life at that point, no family yet or anything like that. So kind of jumped into 12-year-old travel baseball, not knowing what to expect or anything like that. And then coached that with that organization for 1 year, and then started my own organization called the Illinois Redbirds. Just took the same mascot as the college I played for, and stole all their branding, and we use the exact same logo.
Yeah, so you can wear your same hat, right?
That's right, man. You got it. So then we grew really fast. We were supposed to start with just one team, and we ended up the first year with 3 teams, and then the second year to 10, and the third year to 20 teams. And then at that point, it was 2012, and then started Rhino Baseball with a couple other guys, Brian and Andrew Tahako, and that's when Rhino Baseball started. So since then, we've kind of been in the Chicago area for forever, and kind of bounced around to different facilities, and until we finally built our kind of dream project, which we built in the middle of COVID, which was awesome, 2020. 2019, 2020, trying to build a big building. It was interesting, but we got it done, and we've been here ever since. So
that's awesome. And I'm glad you mentioned friend of the pod, friend of mine, Nelson Gord, like all around good dude. He seems to be he's like one of the best connectors in all of travel baseball. So there's no shock that, being from the area you're from, that he was part of the story. All right, so I got to dig into this a little bit. I was making these jokes about the Rhino branding, but then you talked about literally stealing the branding from the college you went to. Did you get a cease and desist letter from them?
When we were the Illinois Redbirds, we did not. And to be honest, it was so small at the time, but they did not say a word. So.
Well, I use that language intentionally because here in my area, one of the local, let's say there's two travel teams that were using the insect that was the the logo for one of the local colleges here for years and years and years, and it was like never a problem. And then all of a sudden, both of these organizations had to change names and logos.
Yeah.
They both got cease and desist letters, and the school said, "We're the only sports team in the country that uses this logo and branding, and we're going to keep it that way." So, kind of shitty, kind of. I don't know. It's like who cares? Who cares? Some like little travel, So I'm glad you didn't get a cease and desist from your school, but which leads us to, I'm assuming you were on African safari, on vacation, and that's what inspired the Rhino name, right?
I've actually never been to Africa.
Okay.
But we were actually looking for. There's so many travel teams in Chicago. It couldn't be more watered down. There's probably 50 travel teams within 20 miles of us. It's just crazy. And so, really, we were looking for a name when we decided to start this organization. And we had been at some meetings. We were meeting with some people and couldn't come up with a name, and everything we wanted somebody to take in. And so we were at a meeting one time, and in the middle of the table was a giant rhino. And we're like, why don't we just be Rhino Baseball? And everybody's like, yeah, fine, whatever. The name doesn't matter. And so we did it. And I think there's two other There's Rhinos Baseball out of Texas and Rhinos out of Wisconsin. So we're technically Rhino Baseball, but just. It's a name that we just wanted to have that was a little bit unique, and we stuck with it. So,
yeah, that's awesome. And you could pull on the string a little bit and say our players have these characteristics, and start listing off characteristics of rhinos. That'd be fun. You may have already done that somewhere on your website, and I haven't seen it. Something about being tough and eating your competition.
Yeah, we try to tell our little guys that, the rhino is the baddest ass animal in the jungle. So have them buy into it a little bit. So
Exactly. I love that. So from tagging along with Nelson to spinning off right away, you got the Rhino sitting in the middle of the table, and you got your own thing up and running. Most guys are starting with 1, 2, 3 teams. And that was, you're talking about less than 15 years ago, right? The 2008.
Yeah.
Yeah. To fast forward, you guys are a pretty big player in the sort of in the Midwest area. What's the total number of teams just from youth through high school that you guys are running today?
Yeah, so we run from 7 through a collegiate league, and we've got our 2 locations. Our main hub is in Shorewood, Illinois, which is really like Joliet, Illinois. And so here we've got 28 baseball teams, and then we have 7 softball teams. And then in Central Illinois, which we're new to Central Illinois, kind of merged together 2 long-standing programs down there with Game 7. Which was a Christian-based travel organization, and then BNBA Gold, which has been in Bloomington Normal, run by all the high school coaches for as long as I can remember. We kind of merged those 2 together. So that group down there has 6 high school baseball teams and then 5 softball teams, and then we've got our one collegiate team, and then we've got one other kind of like offshoot of the Rhino brand called Rhino K's. And that is, we partnered with K's Academy. Josh Cowton was a former teammate of mine at Illinois State, and in my opinion, one of the most knowledgeable biomechanic guys I've ever met on the throwing side. And we send players from here down there to work privately, hour and a half, and we were doing that for a few years, and the results were fantastic. We saw, one of our guys that was already very good with us, named Ashton Izzy, ended up signing a large contract this past year. And he made that like final jump needed with Josh at K's. I think he jumped 7 miles an hour over the course of 3 years, and ended up being an upper 90s guy as a senior in high school, and really took off. So Josh works with tons of pro guys, and we just love his detail. And there's just so many guys that get on Twitter, and they're all like showmen, and most of them can't produce results, or they steal other people's results. Like Josh is tried and true and extremely smart. And so we're like, what if you give us your program and we'll implement it as like K's North, and we'll give you all the credit. And if he was trying to get into the travel side for a couple small groups down there, and they could be Rhino K. So we've had a wonderful partnership over the last couple of years. Our players are seeing it, command and velocity are flying through the roof. And so it's been pretty exciting. So there's 2 teams out of K's Academy called Rhino K's as well. So
gotcha.
It's been.
I lost track. The original question was about the total number. I lost track. It's a bunch of teams, and sort of the direction I was sort of hoping to go based on that question was really talking about scaling. There's probably some guys on here that are post-launch. They've got their first team or their first 5 teams. You're a little bit ahead of that. Talk about what are some of the growing pains or lessons, or the things to look out for with growth, and then maybe some of the things to maybe not pay attention to with growth.
Yep. Yeah, I think most guys that get into the travel, circuit, they're normally former players that love the game, and they usually end up being really good teachers, but there's a lot of frustrations that go along with it. And so, the best ones I've ever seen are the guys that don't do it for the money. There's money to be made, coaching and instructing for sure, but the ones that I've seen that are the best at it, they do it out of just pure passion. And there's so many countless hours that they work where they don't get paid for it. So I think the financial stress at the beginning is going to be hard, because nothing's guaranteed, in terms of payment. And so it's not like getting a job in corporate world where somebody says, hey, we're going to pay you $75,000 a year. If you want to make $75,000 a year, you need to work a load, and you can make as much money as you want to put into it. So, but that can't be the primary reason for it. It's got to be you love development, and you love working with players, and being a leader for those kids to show them the right way to do things. So I think is the one thing you see young guys come in, and I'm sure other organizations can see this, when they bring in a young guy and the guy says, hey, I want to make $100,000 my first year. It's like, well, I don't know what job you're getting out of college making $100,000 a year, but that doesn't happen. Unless if you've got some advanced degree, but really it's, when you see a young guy come in that, they work, they love working 80 hours a week teaching baseball. Like, those are the guys that at the end of the day are going to be the most successful, because they're grinders and they invest all of their energy into their players. Yeah,
that's awesome. Just by coincidence, a recent podcast with the owner of the Minnesota Ice, and to my surprise, he actually has, and this is very rare, he has a full-time job doing medical sales. So imagine the pressure that it takes off of a guy like that, because he doesn't have to worry about the dollars and cents. Because if you know anything about medical sales, that's a pretty good gig. If you've been doing it for more than 5 minutes, you're probably doing okay. So, that allows him the freedom and flexibility to make decisions very differently than the guy who is worried about making rent next week or making payroll or whatever. But it's just to go back. Are there when you're going from say 3 teams to 5 teams to 5 teams to 10 teams, are there besides obviously doing it for the love, and doing it for the right reason? Are there other pitfalls to be wary of? Like, where did things begin to be a struggle for you? Because you guys, you're ahead of a lot of people as far as just volume. I mean, you're in a major market too. Chicago is one of the biggest cities in the world, so it's not like you lack population density. But where did you feel like the biggest growing pains? Was it from going from 1 to 2, or was it going from 5 to 10? Like, where was it for you?
Yeah, I think it's every time you make a major move. So like our expansion in Central Illinois, that's tough. But I think you're right. It is early on. It's why most businesses fail within the first year, and then there's another whole slew of them that don't make it 5 years.
Right.
And I think that stat probably isn't much different than the normal small business that gets started. I think continuing education is critical. I just spent the weekend at the Illinois High School Baseball Coaches Association clinic with the high school that I help coach with.
All right. Sorry for that technical difficulties for you listeners at home. Last thing I heard was Greg was talking about, small business failure happens at a high rate in the first year. And then within just a few years, a whole nother slew of businesses will shut down. So the point being, those first few years are critical. Now, I'll hand the mic back over to you to let you finish your thought if you still have it in mind.
Yeah, no, it's so once you kind of get through that, and the only way that you're going to get through that is you're either going to ask people for money to help support you, or it's going to be sweat equity. And I would highly recommend the sweat equity side, and just living, breathing, your program for the first 5 years, where that kind of takes over your life. And that's really exciting. And I think you get, if you do have a partner, like, you got to find the one that's supportive. And I used to always hear coaches like thank their wives first, and I never really understood it. And, but then I got one, and, without, your family support and your wife, like, going, hey, you're going to work on Friday nights and Saturday nights for 3 or 4 years. Like, you can't do it without that support at home. And some people have a choice to make. And luckily for me, my wife was all on board, with that. And she's actually become more invested as now our kids are playing in our travel programs, and she's here all the time too. So, it's the early on is critical, man. You just gotta find successful people are successful for a reason. They find a way to get it done, and it's a lot of work, but it is totally rewarding once you get through that.
I mean, it sounds like so simplistic when you say it out loud. Like, obviously, if you can't get the thing off the ground, you're not going to scale. So you got to lock in and focus when this thing's in its infancy, when it's when it's still young. You got to take care of it, because it's nice to have big vision, and you can't get to 20, 30, 40 teams wearing your logo if you don't have big vision. But also if you're not locked in and focused when you're at 1 or 2, then you forget it. You've put the cart before the horse. So part of your expansion has been just like, you got a good thing in the Joliet area, and then you see opportunities south of you down in Normal, and you've got relationships, and you got a good brand. Is that a matter of just like when you move down into like the Normal area, which is south of you? Is that a situation where it's just like young guys, like the younger teams who are looking to get into that college recruiting space? Because you see that, that guy who coaches that really good 12-year-old team might not be really the guy who you want leading the charge through recruiting,
Right.
Because he doesn't have a network. So I'm formulating I'm verbalizing a very terrible question, but in my head it makes sense. Like, did you bring on a young organization, or was this established guys at the high school age group that you were just able to put underneath of your wing?
Oh man, that's a really good question. No, they're not younger guys that were coming from a youth organization. It was established high school groups, and two groups that had done really a tremendous job for a number of years. However, they were looking for a little bit more, and I think where some of the guys that were kind of leading those organizations either didn't have the connections or maybe just didn't have the time for it where they were in their season of life. And so, that was where, we kind of came in and said, hey, we get it. You haven't done anything wrong. This is what we would do, and how we could help your players to kind of take your programs to the next step. But there'd have to be a name change, And so, we met with a lot, both sides multiple times, and, and it's kind of one of those things. I think when you're trying to expand, or when there's an expansion thing, like, you really have to kind of stick to your guns, and you got to, march to the beat of your own drummer. Like, this is what we do. And they are going to get somebody else saying that they do something a different way. And, that's might even be one thing for the new guys as well that are in the travel space, is going, hey, you know what? Maybe I don't have to do what I see, this really good organization do, because it might not work for us. You stick to your philosophy, and that's kind of what we've done whenever we've expanded, is go, this is how we'll do it, and then we execute,
Listen, I don't know if we had necessarily agreed on a topic to kick things off with on this call, but I appreciate you opening up about that, because I know there's somebody listening who is, they're where you were, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago. And so hopefully this helps somebody, and so I appreciate you sort of being vulnerable about that. And, cause some people don't want to talk about how they got from 0 to whatever it is, 40, 50, 20, 30, 40, however many. But one of the things you also, not only you had the team side, you got the facility side cranking, but if I'm not mistaken, it's almost like a Rhino facility only, isn't it? You don't have much. It's not a public facility. Is that accurate?
That's 100%. Yeah, and that's since the day one. Like, when you look to get into a space, right? What are you going to do that is different than everybody else? And so from day one, outside of 1 year, we had to rent to some other teams. But outside of that, we've always been completely membership only. So if you're a Rhino player, you are a full-time member. You use the facility whenever you want. You got your QR code that gets you in. You can be here from 5 a.m. till midnight, 365 days a year, and it is solely for our players.
That's pretty cool. It's not, you're not the only group in the country doing it, but it's not. I would say it's not typical. It's
correct,
but it is a cool setup. I mean, not that the other guys are doing it wrong. Having most of the time it's a it's a baseball facility, lesson business with a separate wing. They're usually not named the same thing because they don't want to run away, potential lesson business who don't play for them. So, not wrong, not right, just different. That's very cool. And you've got multiple locations, right?
So we have obviously the two different branches. So our Central Illinois branch, and then we've got our main facility in the Joliet Shorewood area, and then we have what we call the Ched Shed it's all throwing based, and so it's where we take our guys through their throwing program, and that is actually right next door. Not very big; it's another 4,000 or 5,000 square feet, but that's where we handle all of our bullpens, all of our plyo work, and we incorporate the Caves Academy program for our players.
The Ched Shed. I like that so much better than the lab. Everybody's calling everything in baseball a laboratory now. I don't know if you've picked up on that. Like in the last 5 years, everything has become a laboratory. Everything is so high tech. I like Ched Shed better. Hey, go to the Ched Shed and throw the snot out of it.
That's right.
Yeah, that's more my speed. That's pretty cool. So it's private clubs, all Rhino based. You leave the program, you no longer get access. Sorry, your QR code doesn't work anymore. And obviously they got to go find somewhere else to train. I'm guessing this leads to pretty good retention. Because you start pretty young, right? You got the 7-year-olds in there all the way through college. I wonder, is there a way to even compare versus, another organization down the street? Like, is there a way to even guess to know how your retention is versus other sort of, call them regular organizations that don't have the private facility?
I don't think there's statistically a way to do it. And the only thing I know is like there is turnover in every travel organization because everyone's always looking for greener grass, right?
Yes.
Or if Johnny doesn't get to play shortstop, his parents are ripping him out, and I think that's the nature of the beast. I do think our retention is very good, and because it is a completely family atmosphere. I mean, when you've got just in Short alone, if there's it's close to 500 families, and when every single family, and every single player and who their mom and dad is, and that family atmosphere goes a long way, and I think it's what you'd want in any clubhouse. So yeah, our retention is good. Really, the only way that somebody doesn't move on with their program is if skills really start to lack, or if there's parent issues. If there's that parents can create a culture that affects your culture, and there's no room for that. So you just cut bait and go, sorry, best of luck. We don't hold anything against your kid, but your vision does not match our vision, and we wish you the best. So
do you do that obviously before the season happens, right? Like you just not going to bring the kid on. Have you had to do that in season?
100%. Yeah. Yeah. And if you think about that's challenging. Normally it's a conversation with the parent. It almost always happens during season. Like everyone's happy during training because our guys train 120 days of scheduled practices a year with our full instructor staff. So, everyone's always happy with that. It always, parents freak out when it comes down to results. And so those are the, starts with the parent conversation, like, hey, you signed a code of conduct, strike one. Hey, strike two, hey, you can't come to games anymore. I'm sorry, your kid can, but you can't. And then strike three is, hey, we have to remove your son. And so our parents, for the most part, I would say 95% of them are, you couldn't ask for better parents. And each year it gets better because they know that we're not going to deal with it. But at the beginning, man, it was a 50-50 shot. Are we getting a crazy parent? Or are we getting a great parent? And so, that the family dynamic, their, personal family is a critical part in their development. And very rarely do you see somebody be really successful that has, a family that is not, supportive of that and a great family.
I think it's important to emphasize that you guys are obviously you're implementing, contracts or waivers and code of conducts and all that stuff. Because if you don't, then when XYZ situation happens, you don't have that protocol to lean on.
Right.
And this is like, these are the things that when you have two teams, maybe it's not a big deal. But when you have 20 and you're at scale, these are the things you have to be thinking about. Because when you're at scale, guess what? It was cute when you had two teams and you had one crazy parent. You just pulled them aside. But when you're at 20, now all of a sudden, guess what? You also are going to have a handful more crazy, and you got to have a way to deal with that. That's a tough thing, man. But like you got to have systems in place that say,
Yep.
Mom and Dad, remember at the beginning of the year when we read through this in person and you signed off on it and you agreed to it? Well, XYZ, this is the consequences.
Yep.
Yeah, man. That's a tough one. Especially for a young coach, man. You probably got a couple young coaches out there dealing with this thing for the first time. How do they handle it?
So we have them. They tell us the situation, and we meet with the parents, and because that's really our responsibility. And it's shocking how many families like they get to strike one, because look, I know I'm crazy with my kids, and I look at them as like, hey, you might be the next Babe Ruth. They're not going to be, but like that's our rose-colored glasses for our kids, right?
Of course.
And so it's amazing how many families get to strike one, and then you have a conversation, you explain that long-term vision and philosophy and what it's really about, and almost all of them go, hey, you know what, you're right, I lost my mind, I'll be better, and they are, so
yeah.
Look, we're all people, we all make mistakes. I mean, hell, we screw up as a staff, and when we do, we got to own it and go, hey, we did that wrong, we're going to fix it this way. And look, if you can't respect when somebody makes a mistake, then that's probably not a real good relationship, either way, because we're all doing it to provide opportunities for these kids and making them as good as they possibly can. And it takes a village to get this thing done.
For sure. All right. So you mentioned your kids. Let's talk about your kids, which is going to lead into the next part of the conversation. But introduce us to your kids, what ages, and what do they do?
All right. So I have two kids. My wife is April. She's our biggest supporter. And I have an 8-year-old son who he's very athletic. His brain is not there for baseball yet, but I'm hoping it will be. So he loves it, loves basketball. We're trying to get him to play everything he can, trying to keep it easy for him. And all we're trying to focus with him on is just, hey, enjoy the game, try hard, and have a good attitude. That's it.
I have an 8-year-old boy, and he takes after my wife, who was a college track runner. Is right, so super athletic, but no interest in baseball. So all cool.
Yeah.
All cool. He digs basketball, but whatever. He also likes splashing in puddles and swimming in the river. So whatever.
Yeah. For sure.
I like those things too. But okay, and then you have a daughter, and how old is she?
I do. Yep. She's 10. So she started playing softball at like 6, and our first year Rhino softball, we needed a player. We had 10 players, and I was like, look, you can have my daughter. She's going to be the smallest. She's going to be the worst, but she'll be a roster filler. And it was a really hard year for her. She did not get her first hit until her 8th tournament, which is our last tournament of the year. And it was a bunt single. And then she caught 2 fly balls in the outfield her last tournament. And then so she played as an 8-year-old, she played 10s. And then at 9, she played 10s. And then this year she's playing 10s. And man, she just loves it. Super competitive. It's like that kid you got to keep on a leash and be like, hey, I know we teach you hard tags, but like, don't try to like hurt the player. Like her mentality, once we get that honed in, it's she's pretty intense. So, which makes it hard on her, just in terms of trying to, again, have her understand the process that it's not always how many hits do you have. It's, are we developing and how's our attitude, and, just the struggles of being a kid. Because he asks him to do a lot when the travel baseball world is fully crazy, and they feel that for them not to be crazy. And so that's where we try to keep them grounded as much as we can.
And Gosh, that's so. She's probably in there with you all the time, and your boy in the facility with you all the time too.
He is, yeah. Yeah.
Is he on an 8U? You have 8U. Is he playing or is he?
He is, yeah. He's playing.
Got it. So softball, which is where I wanted to go with this. I often ask people, whether it's on a recorded call or not, I always wonder how come we don't see more travel baseball that has a softball wing. You do. Obviously, like we joked about the other day, is because your girl is playing. Can you talk to us a little bit about how, like the pros and cons? Because I mean, from a 30,000 foot view, it seems like this is like an obvious thing, but it may not be obvious, which is why everybody, or maybe it's obvious that it's not the right thing to do, and that's why most people don't. So can you walk through some of the pros and cons that you've seen with having both baseball and softball?
Yeah. You're right. From the high level view, it makes perfect sense. However, there is a animosity between baseball and softball when you're in the same program. And I don't, that was a huge thing to work out. Hey, why does softball get this time? Hey, why does baseball get this time? And whatever the case was, and the programs really are starting to merge finally as one group. And it's still a process, but man, I can't tell you how much better our teams are from year 1 to year 3 on softball, because we train like crazy. We brought in some unbelievable instructors, former college coaches, girls that play professional softball, and that was tough the first year, and so to not have those. So that is the process, and we're not anywhere close to where I know we're going to end up being. But, in terms of how they work together, it's when you're sharing the same space and everybody wants more and more and more, that is, I guess, number one. And then number two then is understanding, and, I can say this because I have a daughter, that's the apple of your eye. And parents are, if you think they're protective on their boys, imagine what it is with their little girl. And so, there's that. But, on the flip side, as coaches, we're like, no, in this world, ladies, if you want something, you need to go and get it. You need to toughen up. So there's mixed messages from, the parents and the players. And when you find that parent that is like, yeah, go get her, get on her when she doesn't hustle, or get on her when she's, gossipy at practice or whatever the case is, that's a kid that is going to be good, So, I absolutely love softball. I get made fun of every single day by every person I know that I coach softball, 5 or 6 days a week now, after spending 12 or 13 years only doing baseball. And they're like, oh, you changed sides, loser. But man, but I love it because the games are so similar. Softball is way faster than baseball.
Yeah.
And it's really rewarding, and you obviously look at those girls like they're your kids, man.
All right. I'm going to ask another question. Maybe it's a stupid question. Maybe you do it. I don't know. Do you train your players in a co-ed fashion? So you might say, hey, let's bring in our, I'm going to make it up. I don't even know if you have high school girls, but let's bring in all our high school catchers to work out, boys and girls. Would that be a thing? Or for example, I know it's a different ball, but you could bring in all your middle infielders, boys and girls. Is that ever something you've done or would think about doing?
We have not. So we do at the young level. So we do a future ballers, spring training type thing for 5 and 6 year olds that are looking for something before their season starts. Yeah. But the problem is 8 to 10 year old boys and girls hate each other. They all have cooties, right? And then once you get to that dating age, we try to 100% keep the high school boys and girls separated. So we do not, even though you probably could. We just don't want to go down that road.
The bad part is, I feel like the hormones would ruin what otherwise could be a really positive opportunity, because on the one hand, you got your boys who are, I don't know if anybody listens to this that I would even get hate mail, but there is this fact of life that most boys of the same age are bigger, faster, stronger, right? Right? And so all of a sudden the girls have to compete their butts off to keep up with that boy who is just physically more dominant. But on the other hand, girls have a way of being smooth like water, and it would be really good to see a boy learning from that. I don't know how this is coming up in 2 back-to-back episodes, but when I stopped playing baseball, I started kayaking. And so like that's my outlet, whitewater kayaking. And one of the summers I spent out in Colorado running rivers, I somehow on a couple trips ended up with a group of all girls. And watching them run a rapid was totally different than watching a boy run a rapid, a man run a rapid, right? It's like, they don't have, like, I'm trying to like knock the wall down and they're trying to like finesse their way through it. And I just remember that moment going, oh man, they're way better than me, right? Like I need to learn from that. And I could see if you could eliminate the stupidity of teenage hormones, some really incredible learning opportunities. But I'm glad it's you and not me who has to deal with the shakeout if you were to offer this. Right. Like maybe you offer it like once a month, like open gym scenario. I kind of want you to, and then I want you to report back to me just for like some kind of like scientific experiment. But overall, it sounds like softball has been a thumbs up. Like it sounds like it's been super positive. And not only that, you think it has. You think you haven't even hit your ceiling. You've got a lot of growth potential ahead of you.
Yeah, I just even like last night we had our 14s in here. They played a doubleheader against a long time, truly like national group, and we won both games. And nothing against that other group. They'd been doing it for a long time, but man, I just remember on the baseball side when we first got started, like we could not compete against anyone, and it takes time. And so like last night was one of those rewarding days where, I got the message at the end of the night how we had done against this group that, 3 years ago we wouldn't even play in the same tournaments, and now to compete against them and beat them, it's like. That's that reward that, when you're painting that vision for your program going, hey, we're not there yet, but we will get there. And here's how we're going to get there. Like that, it's a good feeling when that happens because it's going to happen and you've got to deal with years of frustration, but like you will get there. And again, we're not anywhere close to where we want to be yet, but everything is a process. And, just understanding you're not going to walk in day one and go, hey, we've got a great facility, come play for us, we're better than everybody else, because that's not the case. It still comes down to the players and the development of your players. And we're starting to see that on softball.
And the staff, having the right staff in place was key.
Well, for sure, man, for sure. Our staff is, I couldn't ask for anything better. And like, hey, we get into fights all the time. Like, hey, why are we doing it this way? But then you sit down and you figure it out and you work through it and why it makes sense. And that's healthy communication, and it's, our baseball staff's been doing it for a long time, and I love those guys, and our softball staff has come together, and it's starting to take shape, and that's a nice feeling,
Yeah, that's cool. Let's shift gear here. We've been on at this for a few minutes, and I want to be respectful of your time. I want to ask a couple of these sort of standard questions I sent you the other day. The first one's usually kind of an easy one. What book or movie, website, or any resource really do you find yourself recommending or sharing with anybody, really, your coaches, your parents, your players? So any particular books or movies or any other resource, a Twitter account, whatever?
I think so on like the Twitter account, Zone Baseball, softball. I don't even know where they're from, but like their content that they put out for drill work. I've never met the guys, but like, man, if you're not stealing in baseball or softball, you're doing it wrong. Like there's so many people that have great stuff that they do. You go, man, we can incorporate that. And so it's a great tool for all of our coaches, and they do an awesome job with content. In terms of books and movies and things like that, I really thought about this question for a little bit, and I just thought everyone's different. Like there could be a guy that wants to go and read romantic novels. Who cares? Who am I to tell him what he should read? But something that I think we can all kind of look into that has been just the Bible is just Ron Polk's playbook. Not the mechanical side of like how I know things have changed since it was originally released, but like, man, there's so much content in there that you can literally like take a copy and go, hey guys, this is how you should be running this play. And this is never going to change in the game of baseball. And I think if you're a youth baseball or softball coach, like look into that book because it's there for you. You just got to print it and look at it. Now there's electronic formats of those where you can share them and go through Classroom with your team, which, we do with our players, and we walk them through it, and you can pause it, and the players have to be interactive, and that's great because that's how kids learn. They don't read books anymore. And then the only other one is like, when coaches don't know rules, it drives me crazy, and so go pick up, the NFHS, the Federation umpire book, and just have it with you and just look at it. Because when you don't know the rules, man, that's frustrating. So you are the first person in, I don't know how many episodes I've been asking this question, and that's why I like asking it is, you're the first person who mentioned a rule book. What a great recommendation. I want to go back. You were talking about Zoned. I think, is that Duke Baxter? In that crew? Oh, man.
Is it is it the guys that they're in red, white, and black usually?
Yes.
So that's Duke. He's been on the podcast. He's out of New Jersey, runs a facility, just like he's you, man. He runs a facility, has some teams. The difference is he also has an absolute content machine, and he's put out him and his team. It's not just him, but they've put out a lot of digital courses. A lot of them for free. A lot of them are paid for. So he's been an internet marketer for a long time, and it's quality stuff. That's probably why you keep coming across it. But Duke Baxter, he's a ball of energy too. So fine. He's got, I had him on the podcast probably 3 years ago, playinschool.com/Baxter. If anybody hears this and they want to go kind of listen to him, I'm telling you, you don't need coffee after talking to this guy.
He is incredible. Like and I think, not everybody has a big, huge open space to practice. And I don't know how big their space is, but like if you had a 50 by 50 square and that's all you had, you could run the most productive practice that you've ever, as long as you put together a plan, like just by following him. He's awesome. Yeah,
I'll tell you, man, listen, if we could play baseball outside every single day of the year, that'd be great. But sometimes you're forced inside, and sometimes you're forced inside a lot because you happen to live in the Chicago area. And you know what? You got to be creative. You got to be creative. I want to ask one last question. This one can lead us down a million different rabbit holes. But what is one change that you think could be made to travel baseball that would have the biggest positive impact?
Yeah, no, it's perfect. Nothing to change. No, I'm kidding. There's a lot to change, I'd actually like to see, I think, two main things. I'd love to see kind of the rebuilding of your youth in-house programs that are not travel based. And every travel, you see all the local programs, or sorry, the local town Pinto, Mustang, Bronco, right? Like you see those numbers dwindling as travel baseball is getting more and more and more. And there's a group by us called Whiteford Baseball, and you drive past there any day of the week, like they do it right. Like their volunteers show up, they practice, they've got nice facilities, and it's awesome. And when a player should graduate from their program and go to somewhere that might offer more, great. Like that is awesome. But when you see other ones that are failing, like you don't need to have a travel team in your in-house youth program if you're going to lose every game 30-0 just because to say you want a travel program. Like there should be a little bit of separation there. And man, I just like almost every guy that does what I do, like when we grew up, like we played with our buddies until we were in high school, and it was the same kids, and we wore local sponsorships, and it was cheap and cost effective. And like, I would like to see some of that return. I don't think there needs to be 1,000 travel programs, because there's not 1,000, teams worth of kids that need to be doing it. So
the thing that always gets me with this topic is when you'll see, I live in Richmond. You'll see two teams from Richmond drive up to Philadelphia to play a tournament, and they end up playing each other. And then you'll see two teams from Philadelphia come down to Richmond, and they end up playing each other. And you go, wait, what are we doing here? Like, there's enough. There's enough teams in your community to play against. At the 8-year-old level, at the 9-year-old level. Obviously things change when you're 16. We get that, but I got friends that's 7 and 8 years old traveling all over, and you're like, wait, why? There's teams right here in town. Just play them here. Like you don't have to drive to Philadelphia to play the team across town.
Yeah, it for sure, and that's the philosophy comes from the top of an organization. You got to make sure your coaches follow it, the parents understand it, because if not, they see something on Twitter, they go, well, that kid right there, he's rated the number 1 10-year-old pitcher in the state of Illinois, and it's like, what are you talking about? Like that kid might not be able to tie his shoes, so let's focus on some more important things first.
Correct.
So the only other thing that I don't know if that philosophy will ever change. I'd love to see it, but I guess for the high school players is, and I know it comes from collegiate recruiting and recruiting early, and with some steps they made on the recruiting side in terms of contact, I think it might start to right itself a little bit, which is great. But just having players chase rankings and metrics, that is very scary, because you see guys that metrically are awesome and they're really bad baseball players. And, having guys understand that, there's metrics are a part of it, sure, but man, there's so much more. Can you be good on a field? Are you a good teammate? And for the little guys too, that aren't like those metric chasers that are huge and big and strong that have matured early, those young guys, man, when they do everything right, once they grow, they will be better. And it's like a unicorn, the guy that is metrics are great and they stay super high and they're rated high and they end up being the best. Like I know those players exist, but it's not many, so that process, and trusting your process, for years and years and years, like that's a fun player. And, there's countless guys that I played with that you were like, yeah, they're a good player. And they're the guys that end up playing the longest. Because they just stuck with it. They weren't chasing rankings. They just kept getting better. And like, those are the types of players that you love.
If, the ranking thing to me, it's like, the parents love it. I think it's all parent. It's parent. It's really parent driven. And it's like, the reality is, if you're, say, top 10, whatever, say call it top 10%, cool. But also, I'm pretty sure all the college coaches know that you're a top guy without that ranking, right?
Yeah.
And if you're not a top guy, then you don't need the ranking. You don't what are you going to share that with a college guy? Like, they realize you're not a top guy. So it's like, who's the top? Who is the ranking actually helping? If you're a top guy, everybody knows it. If you're not a top guy, like, please hide my ranking. I'm not a top guy. So it's like, how does this continue to be such a big deal? And I think parents love it. I mean, kids do too. Let's be honest. Kids do too. But it's just like, does it actually move the needle? I don't think so.
I mean, look, if you've been around baseball for forever, like if you go out to a game and had no idea on rankings, like you in your brain, you would highlight players that are different than what those rankings are the vast majority of the time. Like, sometimes the rankings expose you, and you might get seen first because you're rated the number one first baseman and whatever. But a coach comes out and they watch you play catch and they go, bad arm, heavy feet, whoa, man, a lot of swing and miss. Yeah, not our guy, but I like that guy. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like rankings are a part of it, and a lot of times they do help. But I just think the player's philosophy, that shouldn't be their only philosophy. You know, and we've got some awesome relationships with like the guys here from PBR and awesome, conversations like, hey, are we missing anybody? And we'll be like, hey, this guy right here is really good. Here's some video and whatever you think, and so like, it's not, PBR could be a wonderful thing. But if players are just focused on that, you're putting the cart before the horse.
I wonder what would happen if they, as well as Perfect Game, as well as XYZ, all stopped doing rankings. I wonder if that would have a positive or a negative impact on the travel ball community.
Yeah, I think. That's a tough question. Where would parents spend their money?
Well, I mean, they could. Well, that's the thing. Like, you could still go to a camp or showcase. You could still go to all those things, but like, just eliminate
lose the ranking.
Yeah, just lose the rank. Like, keep going to those things because those events are oftentimes really positive, right? Like, it gives kids an opportunity to work out, to learn from somebody, maybe even to work out in front of a college coach. These are all positive things. I'm just saying, like, what would happen if we just took that one little part out of it? I don't know. Who knows? Yeah, maybe no change. Maybe no change at all.
Maybe no change. It's
but maybe it's a little bit positive.
Yeah, I do. I will say this: like, when we run some PBR showcases out here and stuff like that, and just sometimes the conversations with the guys that are running it, they'll be like, "Hey, I really like that guy because of this," and when you get a nice write-up on a player of like something constructive, that is invaluable. And I think that for like young players, when they go to a showcase at like 13 or 14, like, hey, you're not getting recruited yet, but like, you got to learn how to do these things. You got to learn how to go to a showcase and get the nervous jitters out and know where your numbers are. Like, where are you weak? Where are you strong? And we love reading the reports on players, good or bad. Because it does help shape a player's development.
For sure. Is there, you've listed off a couple of pretty big items. Is there anything else that you would, any other little changes you would make to travel baseball that would make a positive impact?
I think the only other one is just, having a good relationship between travel and high school coaches. That is I know it's a tough one, and we're two different seasons. And, I think the high school coaches that are the best high school coaches respect what travel does and should be about. And the best travel coaches respect the high school coach and what they do. And, every year we'll have some guys that are like, I might not play high school. And it's like, well, hold on a second. Well, I don't really like the coach. Well, it doesn't matter, if you like the coach or not, because what do they spend most of their time on? Like, those guys have a short season, a short window, and their job is to prepare their team to win games. And they do tons of drill work, but I can tell you on the travel side, we don't spend enough time on how to hold runners, how to, how to do your rundowns and your relays and your team concepts, because it's more, let's fix the swing, let's fix the mechanical side of this. So it is a two-headed monster where each side teaches a little bit of the same stuff, but there is simply stuff that high schools do a better job at, and it's that team atmosphere. And I couldn't imagine doing what I do today and not having played high school baseball. It was critical in my development as not just a player, but a human being. And so I think as you push those relationships and you communicate well with high school coaches and you let them know that you respect what they do, respect can be mutual both ways, even though you might do things a little bit different. Yeah.
You're the second coach in a row who's brought up the same topic. It's a very important one. You got to keep these lines of communication open.
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, you're really talking about the health of a kid.
Yep.
If you're not communicating, you can blow a kid's arm out very easily.
Yep.
Very easily.
Yep. 100%.
Do you have any parting words as we wrap up? Any last comments, if anybody's still listening, that you want to share with parents, players, any other coaches who might still be listening to us?
Not really, man. Travel side, it's a wonderful industry. It can be a wonderful industry, and the relationships you make with these players, man, it's everything. And especially with the way that the world is, and right now with kids and these high demands, like your reach can go a really long way, with these players. And you might be the only guy or the only female coach that is able to get guys not just development to the next step, but to carry them through those tough times. And it's a really rewarding industry, man. It's I would just say for the guys that are struggling with it, like we've all been there, just stick with it, keep grinding, ask for help, reach out to the people that are doing it well and say, hey, can I improve on anything here? Is there anything that, you can do to help me out? Just ask for help. People love to help and see people be successful.
They absolutely do. That's great. Man, I've enjoyed this. We definitely need to keep in touch down the road. Don't hang up. I'm gonna stop the recording, but don't hang up. But thanks again for jumping on with me. All right, don't go anywhere.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, sounds great.